is a native willow trellis, and these are 2-year-old hazelnuts. More apricots. I have stinging nettles right here with shellbark hickories, salmon berries, devil's club red elderberries, crab apples, 2-year-old chestnuts, Siberian stone pines, cascade blue huckleberries, black huckleberries, European bilberries, and then I just have giant sequoias because why not?
Hello everyone and welcome back to On the Garden Path, a series where we take you all over Alaska to explore community gardens and see how they're contributing to food security and sustainability all throughout the state. Well, you are all in for a treat today. We're taking you down to the Mat-Su Valley area to talk to a man who seems to know everything there is to know about Alaska's perennial fruits, nuts, and berries. Josh at Bear Mountain Forest Nursery has spent years cultivating a permaculture food forest right in his own backyard and uses it to grow his own food, propagate plants, and educate as many people as he can on how they too can grow cold-hardy, perennial fruits, nuts, and berries in Alaska's harsh climate without very much work at all. Bear Mountain Forest Nursery isn't a community garden, per se, but it might as well be the way that Josh shares his bounty of knowledge and nutrition with us. By the time I left, I was already planting my own permaculture food forest. And many of the plants he has there would make a great addition to any standard community garden. So without any further ado, let's go see what we found on Bear Mountain.
I'm Josh.
Thank you for last minute meeting us.
Of course, thank you so much. I have a couple nursery areas. I have all my potted stock up on the carport, which is kind of stuff that I'm selling this year. I have my perennial nursery beds in the back, and then I have my food forest down here.
Josh did take me on a tour of his whole food forest, and we learned an incredible amount about the plants he's growing. But first we took some time to ask him about how all of this began.
So tell me a little bit about how you got started interested in plants in the first place. What was your journey from that interest to this blooming piece of property that we see today?
So I've always had a lifelong passion for plants. My poor parents, they are the superstars in my life because when I was young and I first learned to talk, I was excited by trees. So Mom, it's a tree. And so you'd imagine like drives, because we lived in Washington State. Every time I saw a big tree, I had to point out, and Mom, it's a tree, it's a tree. So you can imagine how long those drives were. And then I started learning what the trees were. Hey Mom, that's a Douglas fir. Hey Mom, that's a big leaf maple. And then it got worse when I started learning the Latin names. And my mom, eventually learned when her eyes glazed over that the conversation was probably over. But I've always been really passionate about plants. I always had tons of houseplants in my room. Anytime we had space outside, I had pots of tomatoes going. My grandma and grandpa were big into plants as well, so they would kind of poke me, and they'd kind of push me in the right direction when it comes to that. It wasn't until high school that I developed a passion for food because I joined FFA in North Pole High, and so they showed me what a greenhouse was like, and we were growing plants to sell and started touring farms. I'm like, wow, I could channel my passion for plants into growing food. And that was kind of really exciting to me. And then fast forward, I realized that I needed to probably join the military to kind of get out of North Pole and figure out what to do with my life. So I joined the military, went to North Dakota. I got to see what they did in another cold climate, but with warmer summers. But it was my first deployment. I was watching plant videos on YouTube because that's all I did for when I wasn't working. Working out. I was watching YouTube videos of plants, and I stumbled upon some permaculture videos where basically Sepp Holzer and the Kremderhof in the Alps of Austria, and basically where he created microclimates literally from the valley floor up to the ridge tops, and he would stagger his fruit harvest from the valley to the top based off of the elevation and orientation. And I was inspired. I'm like, so as soon as I got home from my deployment, I came home with deployment money. I planted a bunch of stuff that I shouldn't have in North Pole. And my parents still have an 8-foot apple tree. They have a cherry bush. They have Saskatoons and Gurhants and gooseberries and haskaps, and it's still growing in their yard. And so I'm like, there's more potential here. I'm inspired. So when I moved to Anchorage, I was like, you guys, I'm in the banana belt now. There's like, people don't realize, like, compared to Fairbanks, oh, you guys are zone 3, zone 4. I'm like, that's like the warm spots in the hills. This is easy. So I'm like, I'm gonna grow everything that people say I can't grow down here. Hazelnuts, walnuts, sweet cherries. And so when I finally had the opportunity to buy a house in 2016. I bought this house, and it was funny because talking with all the locals, they were like, you're up at 1,100 feet on the mountainside. You're going to be in Fairbanks pretty much growing wise. You're going to have a short growing season. It's going to get to -50, plant for zone 2. And I'm like, being from Fairbanks, I'm like, every forecast I ever heard in Fairbanks in the winter was, it's this temperature in Fairbanks, warmer in the hills. I'm like, I feel like you guys are missing part of the story here. So I bought this house not knowing whether that was true or not at 1,100 feet, started monitoring the weather, and I noticed the same inversion. We were average 15 to 20 degrees on those coldest days, 15 to 20 degrees warmer up here than down there. So I'm like, okay, it's on now. I'm gonna grow everything here. And so I started experimenting. We started kind of opening up the space. This was all like the thickest willow and alder swamp you could ever imagine. So I selectively thinned what I could, and then just basically used the organic material, brush piles for critters, or I'd build hugelkultur mounds, bury the logs, because I wasn't going to burn it. I wasn't going to haul it off the property, just recycle it back in. Some of the birch, I opened up some of the birch forest just to expose sun to the hillside. But after that, I just started planting trees. I started grafting trees. I started experimenting, and some things did great, some things didn't. But after, because I've been in the property for 8 years now, I'm starting to get a feel for what's going to work and what's not. And mind you, we had winters like this last winter where we got 132 inches of snow. So it's like there are challenges that still arise. And like the year before that, we got 50 inches of snow in 11 days, and it destroyed so many of my trees. But it's one of those where, hey, this is the craziness that Alaska has, and it's probably gonna get more crazy in the near future. So it's like just diversifying what we're growing, maybe not being afraid to push the bounds a little bit. And so that's part of, like, I plant the reliables like haskaps that Alaska can never kill, but I also grow sweet cherries and walnuts because we don't know what it's going to be in 20 years. And so it's all about just diversifying what I can grow here. And then whatever information I have here, it's like, hey guys, free information for anybody. However you apply it to your property, go for it. So that's why I did the TikTok and Instagram. And it's just sharing that information real time so people can take that information and go 10 steps further than myself.
Awesome. So where did the name Bear Mountain Forest Nursery come from, and did you intend on establishing it as a business or an organization, or did you just kind of like call it that because that was your thing?
So I will say that, so currently we're standing on Bear Mountain. So the point right here that's really sharp, that's called Bear Point. So, but we all locally here in Chugach call it Bear Mountain. So we lived up on Bear Mountain, and then I was like, a Bear Mountain Nursery, it just doesn't have a ring to it, because like what I'm trying to do is regenerative. I'm trying to diversify food crops. I'm trying to grow native species. I'm trying to promote like that food forest system. I'm like, I could do Bear Mountain Food Forest Nursery. I'm like, that just doesn't have a ring to it.
A lot of words.
So I was like, Bear Mountain Forest Nursery. I really want to emphasize the fact that this is a forest, and this is like, I'm respecting the forest. It's not just a nursery, because it's not just a business for me. This is, yes, am I going to take in money? Am I going to sell plants? Absolutely, but that's not the goal. This is an outlet that I can now use as a way to then bring in money here and then help get resources to folks who don't have access right now. So, but I really wanted to illustrate the point by putting forest in there, that this first and foremost is a forest, and we respect it as such here. So that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah. So you came in here and you worked with the land.
Yep.
as you saw it, but you worked with it in such a way that it will then feed you.
Yep, exactly.
Actually.
And feed the local ecology. I'm not here. I do put up a moose fence because I love my bullwinkles, but I love my bullwinkles out there. So I plant willows along the fence so they can eat it out there. But all the birds, the rodents, we've had lynx in here. We had a grizzly run through a couple years ago. We're part of this mountain first. It's about coexisting however I can with what's already here, because whether people like to realize it or not, we aren't the owners and the supreme beings of the land. We are part of the environment, whether we like it or not. So it's just respecting my role in that and just being the best steward I can in the meantime. And if I were to pass away tomorrow, this land would probably revert back to forest and with very little harm. And that's kind of the goal.
Do you want to tell us anything else about your social media journey? How did that begin? And how did you end up to 12,000 followers, and what's the interest there?
So the social media, I've always been that sharing piece. So on Facebook, that went really well. I'd share all my plant, like, hey guys, look what I'm growing, on all the Alaskan plant pages, and that resonated really well with people. So I kind of planted that idea of, hey, people are hungry for this information. Then I saw COVID kick off, and I saw the shortages of food, and then Ukraine kicked off, and shelves went empty again. And so people were like, food security, food security. I'm like, hey guys, I don't have all the answers for food security, but here's some things I'm doing here. And I'd share it on the Facebook pages. So when I realized I was going to do a nursery, I was like, I need to do TikTok. I kept putting it off. I'm like, I'm not hip. I'm not young anymore. I'm in my 30s. I don't know what TikTok's about. And so, but I downloaded it because somebody told me I needed to, so I did, but I never uploaded a video. And then I made a 10-minute tutorial on grafting apple trees, and Facebook wouldn't take it. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this 10-minute video? I didn't edit it at all. And I'm like, oh, I have TikTok, let's see what happens. And TikTok took it, and it was like 1,000 views, and for me that was exciting.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, hey. So I started making shorter videos. I started like, hey guys, look at this tree, look at these graphs, look at these berries. And people, the interest, and it was crazy because it wasn't just like my Facebook groups, it was Alaska, but I was having people reach out from Sweden. I was having people reach out from New Zealand. And it was like the ideas went far beyond Alaska, and the sphere, it basically went well beyond the sphere that I had known before. And I was like, wow, this information can go further. So I've tried to use that platform since then to just, hey, share information that I have, and also, hey, problems that we have, and trying to get solutions, get people engaged with both when it comes to social issues and when it comes to environmental issues and food issues, and bringing people to that conversation. Because so many people, they want to do better, they want to get involved, they just don't know what they don't know. So when I have that information, I'm like, let's share it with everybody, and what you do with it is up to you. And so I think that's part of like, I'm an open book, and I'll share with anybody what I know, and I think maybe that's what's resonated. I'd like to think it's not the mustache, but
It's a little bit the mustache,
Yeah.
let's be honest. You have a full-time job.
yeah.
You have a house to maintain, animals, and then look at all of this that you've been taking us
Yeah.
on a tour through. How do you maintain it all?
Again, it's my minimalist approach makes it doable, because people think of this food forest as this crazy concept where it requires a ton of input, but in reality, when you work with the ecology, there's less fighting. Like, I don't look at weeds as necessarily a net bad. If I have weeds that are popping up, I quickly pull them and I drop them back down, because they pulled the nutrients from the soil, I'm returning the nutrients to the soil. So my inputs are minimal and just enough to kind of keep things going in a positive direction, but I have to trust in the ecology and the soil, basically the system that has existed here for thousands of years. I'm entrusting that to do most of the work. I just make minor adjustments, and then I observe. And I watch what happens. How does it respond to my inputs? Did that work? Did that not? But by just working with the ecology, there's a lot less input on my part. I look at it as lazy man's gardening. So, because this is the food forest, it's just, I plug and play certain things in certain spots, but nature does the rest of it for me. And I understand that that doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but if you can build the system up, build up the organic materials, build up your soils, and plant plants that are truly adapted to your site, you'll be amazed at how it's not. If you start looking at it as less of like, I need to absolute control this space, and more of like, hey, it can be a little wild too, it takes a lot of pressure off. And suddenly I come out here, I walk around, this is my happy place too, so that's part of it. So I take my escape from humanity, I come out here walking, just minor adjustments. So like cow parsnip's getting a little rowdy, I'm just gonna knock him back a little bit so the current gets some sun. And then, oh, that hemp nettle, I don't need that guy right there. Mulch. And that's just kind of in passing. And so in my happy place, I just do little bits of maintenance here and there, so it's never overwhelming.
Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of, you spend time in here.
Yeah.
And you have your hands on the plants with you spend a lot of time with them, getting to know them, watching them every day as well. I understand not everybody would have the time for a full acre of food forest, but being as much of an enthusiast as I am, and how this is my happy place, it doesn't feel like work out here. But people think of a food forest, oh, hey, I have to have an acre. No, you can have planting edible stuff. You can have you have to have 2 haskaps, but you can have 2 honeyberries. You can have a single apple tree. You can graft your cotoneaster over. You don't have to have something that's overwhelming. You could have a balcony on your apartment. You just grow a pot of tomatoes. You grow a couple of bags of potatoes. It's just about taking advantage. What do you have the energy for? What do you have the resources for? And just taking advantage of that space that you do have. If you have a community garden plot, being able to convert that over, and if you grow extra, sharing it with your community members, it's all just, what do you have the energy for? What do you have the space for? And is it something that's going to be taxing on you or not? And so I think it's one of those where if people look at it less as a job and more of an outlet or an escape, I think it becomes much more doable. And I understand that's not for everybody, but for me, it's my favorite escape. Is there anything else you wanted to say about if people wanted to contact you and ask you for information? Can they? And
of course. So on my social media, I do the Frozen Plant Guy, which is more than just plants, but Bear Mountain Forest Nursery is plants. And if you have a question for me, I'm an open book. So as long as they're like, the thing is there's no dumb question. Everybody has different levels of knowing, and there's nothing wrong with not knowing. If you have a question about it, reach out. I have no problem. I may not answer it immediately because my ADHD goes every different direction, but I will try my best to reach out or make sure to answer the questions to the best of my ability, and just for real time be sharing that information back.
Thank you.
Of course.
Once Josh finished telling us his story, we got the privilege of getting a personal tour through nearly every plant in his nursery. I've put the full names of as many plants as possible on the screen, so that if you want to try your own permaculture food forest, or just a few berry bushes by your front door, you have a place to get started. Josh's food forest itself starts immediately inside the front gate.
This right here, this is a native willow trellis, and there's kiwis climbing up it right here.
Oh, great.
And the kiwis are going to climb up into the birch tree eventually.
I love that little archway thing going on. So cute.
Trying to create a physical barrier going in. So planting native spruce and alders, and then have sweet cherries on the south side. And then I have hazelnuts and walnuts growing, and then some pines and firs and things like that. So these are the cow parsnips. So just be aware it's in the carrot family, but it has a sap that will react with the sun and it'll give you phytophotodermatitis. So just don't get, like, if you just try not to brush up against it too much, it won't harm you if you just touch it, but if you get the sap on you on a sunny day, it'll burn you.
Is that otherwise known as Devil's Club?
No,
Or is
actually
it
I have
different?
Devil's Club growing over there, which I can point out.
Okay.
So Devil's Club, it doesn't have any chemical reaction, it just physically is
Just
evil.
itchy and spiky.
And then these guys, I have stinging nettles right here, which are a lovely edible, but they have these little hypodermic needles, silica needles here that just, it's a burning itching. It won't hurt you, but it's very unpleasant. So just be aware brushing against this vegetation.
Well, you've got a hose here on the ground. Is that for watering the plants?
It is, yes. It's for irrigating my nursery beds.
And this is all on your land?
Yep,
here?
absolutely. So the property goes to about that spruce tree and then goes up the hillside to the power lines, and then basically this corner lot. Oh, the geese are probably gonna yell at us, but that's okay. Part of the experience, I guess. Yeah, so this is like the perennial nursery area. So this is where I propagate things for, basically if I want to grow them for a year or two, or some of my experimental species, I grow them here, and basically the winters I either determine whether I'm gonna plant them in my food forest or donate them to projects or sell some of them. So like these are 2-year-old hazelnuts. So a lot of these, I don't know if you guys know, but we launched the Future Crops Initiative where we planted 150 hazelnuts in Palmer and 100 hazelnuts up in Fairbanks to basically bring more people to the conversation of food security in the face of climate change. So we're like, hey, let's plant hazelnuts. That's something that's bold. And all of them survived in Fairbanks.
Wow.
And we actually had more damage in Palmer than we did Fairbanks.
Oh,
but,
wow.
So these are bred in North Dakota and have survived in North Dakota and Minnesota for almost 50 years. So now we're bringing their breeding work up to Alaska.
Awesome.
So these are all 2-year-old hazelnuts. They're little guys, but they're hardy. All the beds we passed over there are all native berries. So like salmon berries, Devil's Club red elderberries, cloudberries, and what else? I had blueberries there last year, and then some Saskatoons and native mountain ash. So just growing those. And then looking at these are different crab apples. So I'm going to grow those for a year or two and then graft onto them. I have some, these look a little haggard, but these are actually unique because these are actually hazelnuts grown from Alaskan ripened hazelnuts here in Anchorage. And then these are various crabapple seedlings in local Usurian pears. They don't look like a whole lot, but within a year or two, they'll be big enough that I can graft varieties onto it and then donate them to food projects.
Awesome.
And then these are from a local sour cherry. So a friend of mine has a big sour cherry that produces really early, delicious sour cherry. So these are seedlings. So each one, in theory, could be a brand new variety of cherry for Alaska. These are actually, I've been collecting salmonberries for about 3 years down in Girdwood. And so these are some of my 2-year-old seedlings. So they really like these wet nursery beds. So I'm trying to make these available through the nursery. Then these are, so these are all a cherry rootstock. And then these are actually unique in the fact that there was a little bit of damage this year, but these are actually apricots grown from ripe apricots in Palmer. So these are actually Alaskan apricot trees.
Alaskan apricots. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, there's actually this lady in Palmer that has 2 large 20-foot Manchurian apricots in her front yard. She produces 50 pounds of fruit every year, and then she sells little seedlings and pits to everybody in the community. So
what kind of a climate does the apricot grow in here? Because there's a lot of microclimates going on.
So here in South Central, the cold isn't an issue because they're hardy to about -40. The problem is you need a lot of heat units. So you have to have a very favorable site because in a warm summer, they'll ripen just about anywhere. But in those cool summers, it's a favorable microclimate. That's the only place they'll ripen. So up against the south side of a building or southern exposure, you want the most favorable, like where the most heat will accumulate during the day. And that will promote early flowering. It'll promote actual ripening of the fruit. Otherwise, you'll have an ornamental apricot tree, which is what mine is. So
Awesome.
Being up here at elevation, they don't ripen. But that's, we'll see if that's the case in 20 years. These are more apricots. These are actually from improved variety in North Dakota. So these are open pollinated. So I'm going to be basically growing those and then donating and selling some of them. This one right here, this is Xanthoceras sorbifolia, also known as your yellowhorn, or it's coined the macadamia nut of the north. So it's native to China and southern Russia, and it produces these little, like, I guess they're these pods that are full of these nuts that are about the size of a large pea, but supposedly they taste like macadamia nuts. And these are grown commercial. These grow as far north as like North Dakota and Michigan. So we're just trialing them, plant a bed of them, and if 2 of them survive, hey, let's move on from there. This is another one of my experimental beds. So these are 2-year-old chestnuts. So these are Layeroka chestnuts. So the first year they died back pretty bad, and then the year after that they were a little hardier, and then they died back pretty good this year. Just part of the trial game. We had a very cool summer this last year. And then these are all European hazelnuts. Most of these are going to be grown and then basically donated or sold to folks down on the coast to experiment with hazelnut culture down in Kodiak in Southeast Alaska. I know a grower down in Ketchikan who really wants to grow hazelnuts, so I'm going to be giving him these versus the hybrids that'll go up north. These are shellbark hickories, so these overwintered. So, and actually like this one didn't die back at all and it's growing, so I'm pretty excited to see how those do. These are our native strawberries, Fragaria chiloensis subspecies pacifica. So up in Fairbanks, you have the Fragaria virginiana, the little wild strawberries. Well, this is a coastal species that grows along the Pacific coast, and it's actually one of the parents of the domestic strawberry. So I'm growing these to grow them to make them available because it's a beautiful native ground cover that's edible. These are actually pretty exciting because here in Alaska, for the longest time, we basically we were stuck with the hardiest apple rootstocks to graft apples onto, and that was it. Well, there's the Geneva Research Station down in New York where they've bred dozens and dozens of varieties of rootstocks, where dwarf apple rootstock, full-size apple rootstock, and everything in between. But we didn't know here in Alaska whether they would survive or they would translate, whether a dwarf would even survive in Alaska, or maybe a full-size dwarf in Alaska. So they basically sent us, through the Alaska Pioneer Fruit Growers Association, all the different varieties of Geneva rootstocks to evaluate to Alaska's conditions, and then reached out to members like, hey, would you be willing to trial them? So I have 6 different varieties of Geneva rootstocks that are anything from complete dwarf, a 6-foot tree, to a 20-foot tree. I'm growing these for a couple of years. Whatever survives, I'll graft onto it and then evaluate, like, is it a viable apple rootstock for Alaska? Here's a mountain ash relative called Sorbus domestica, which is an old time fruit from Europe that was almost been lost to history. So there's one gentleman in Washington who's growing them, so he sent me a bag of semi-rotten fruit from his trees, and these are now 2 years old. So, but it's related to a mountain ash. So what it does is it produces like a mountain ash berry, but it's the size of a small pear, and you let it go through a process called bledding, and it tastes like spiced applesauce. Ooh, but these trees will produce hundreds of pounds of fruit. It was honestly, in Europe, it used to be extremely popular, but the problem is it wasn't as nice as a fresh apple. It had to undergo the bledding, which is almost, I won't say fermentation rotting, but it has to start breaking down with the freeze thaw in the fall. So it's something that was almost lost to history, and then most of them were cut down in Europe, but there's a couple folks still growing them, and now I have a bunch of seedlings here in Alaska. No. And then here's my biggest salmon berry from seed. So that's same age as that one over there.
Oh wow, yeah.
So that's like 3 plants all together, and it's just, so my goal with these is I collected the seeds along Crow Pass Road in Girdwood. So I'm growing these. Now I'm gonna basically, whatever berries I produce, that will become part of my seed source that'll feed back into the nursery. Because I want to be as sustainable as I can. It's awesome going out in nature and like, hey, going to Hatcher's Pass and picking different species of blueberries and growing them within ecoregions, going up to Fairbanks, picking low bush blueberries. But there's something to be said about like having my own patch where I can also, that's a seed source as a backup. Like, hey, I don't make it to Girdwood, I have salmon berries here.
Yeah.
So, did you know we can grow pine nuts here in Alaska?
I did not know that at all.
So these guys are these are pine nuts that do great here in South Central, but there's a species that grows well in Fairbanks too. This is Pinus coriensis, or your Korean nut pine. So these are hardy to about -35, so maybe some spots in the hills, but Fairbanks would be struggle with these. But most of the pine nuts you buy in the stores are actually wild collected from this growing in southern Siberia and Korea.
Oh wow.
So these are extremely hardy, so I'm growing these out. They take a while to get going, but I'm trying to make these available because the nursery trade just doesn't have a whole lot of them.
About how long does it take for one of these to start producing?
So if you just plant a tree, it could take 15 to 20 years, but there's also some research coming out of Russia where if you graft a branch off of one of these onto like a Scotch pine, you could bump it up to 5 to 8 years. Oh, wow. So that's something I want to experiment with. I haven't gotten there yet. And then these guys right here, this is just a common cotoneaster, which is a shrub that's grown everywhere. But what's cool about it is in Russia, they graft pears onto these and it produces a dwarf pear tree that only gets 6 to 8 feet tall. And it's extremely precocious. So it produces early and large pears. So you just have to leave some nurse branches. So I grew these from seed just so I can graft pears onto them.
So that's the kind of thing that we need in Alaska is
Yep.
early, quick, lots of produce.
And what's awesome about these is half the people in Anchorage and Fairbanks already have these growing in their yard. So if you can teach them skill of just grafting a pear onto it, suddenly you turn a shrub that's just growing there that provides nothing for anybody. Now it's providing, it's more than, it has utility, it produces food. Same with people have crab apples in their yard. You don't have to graft over your whole crab apple, but just graft 1 or 2 branches on there. That's just enough for a couple fresh apples, and that's better. Because the thing is, people think of we have to grow all of our own food in our own yard. That's not necessarily it, but moving closer to that, even if it's just an apple tree, even if it's you just graft over one of those, or if you're sharing with your neighbors, that's how we get through. That's how we get closer to food security. So that's part of, like, we want to experiment with this and then show people it can be done, and then people can then take the grafting classes and then can take that home and start playing around with that. Because I think that so much of people are aware of the shortfalls when it comes to food security and food systems here in Alaska, but and especially now after the pandemic, so people want to get engaged. So that interest is there. Now we just need to kind of channel people to the information and maybe do some research ourselves and bring them in on it, because people, they're interested. So maybe just feed them the information, not hiding any of the information, just open forum, a citizen science project, and together, kind of that community we were talking about, that's how we kind of step closer to it. And then these guys right here, I'm breeding pears for Alaska, and that's what these are. So a buddy in North Dakota, he pollinated his European pear, which is a Southworth pear, which is hardy in North Dakota's conditions. He crossed it with a Siberian pear. He collected the seeds and sent them to me. So these are offspring. So basically this year, once this goes dormant, I will collect this branch and I'll graft it onto an established pear tree, and then I'll evaluate. If the fruit's good, that's a brand new variety that can then be released as a local pear. And then, hey, send it up to Fairbanks, send it down to Juneau, send it down to Washington. Let's evaluate it for whether, does it do well here? Does it do well in Fairbanks? Or is it just kind of a dud? So each of these have the potential to be great. Each of these have potential to be terrible. We're doing that with apples over there too. So we're trying to breed Alaskan apples. These guys are the ones, I just planted these a couple days ago. These are the ones that would grow in Fairbanks. So these are Siberian stone pines, Pinus suburbica. These are hardy to -70, -80. It's one of the hardiest trees on the planet. It grows up like rocky outcrops in Siberia. But it produces edible pine nuts that are absolutely delicious. The only downside to these is you go plant these in a beautiful manicured lawn, they don't stand a chance, because they rely on the mycorrhizal associations with the fungi in like the boreal forest to survive. So you plant it in natural soil with leaf litter and like organic material, they'll do fine. But you plant them in a lawn, they'll die. So that's why we're growing these out. But these are so rare in the nursery trade, so we're trying to grow them out and make them available. And then I just have giant sequoias, because why not? And then these are the apple seedlings. I just planted these a couple days ago, but these are all from open pollinated apples and wasilla. And so we're actually gonna grow them from seed. We're kind of like the pears, grow them for a year or two. We'll cut them off and graft them onto established trees. And because these all came from hardy, delicious apples here locally, some of these will be made of good stuff. And then each of these has potential to be a brand new cultivar of apple for Alaskan conditions.
That's great.
And then service berries, and then those are all apples I grafted. I'm going to grow out for a year, but those are specifically for Southeast Alaska. For whatever, social media is a crazy thing. When I started advertising the nursery, I had folks in Juneau, Ketchikan, Metlakatla who were like, hey, we want to buy trees from you. I'm like, well, I'm grafting for South Central and Interior. I'm not really grafting for Southeast. So I had to do a lot of homework, and these are all Southeast Alaskan trees that would do well on these rootstocks.
So you've been adapting to the demand a little bit as well as your following grows.
The thing is social media is crazy, because again, your audience, it goes across this. I have a school teacher down in the Aleutians who wants to grow some of these fruit trees, and we don't, okay, will they work? We don't know. But that's the thing, like even growing up in Fairbanks, growing up here in Alaska, there were so many limitations of, we don't ship to Alaska, we don't know anything about growing in Alaska's conditions, so I had to kind of figure that out. But I don't want access to ever be the limiting factor when it comes to food systems here in Alaska. So the more we can like at least make these available to folks in rural Alaska and small town Alaska off the road system, the closer we are. So the goal is grow these out and then send them out bare root. I'm going to graft a bunch of apples next year. I have people up in Ambler, I have people in Eagle, I have people in rural like Bush, interior Alaska, which historically speaking, they didn't grow apples, but we're discovering that there are apples that grow in North Pole just fine. So we're gonna like, hey, you wanna try one in Fort Yukon? Let's send one out there. Because if we can get these trees out to those folks, that's how we get closer to food security. It's not just here on the road system, it's out there. So it's just, I think I wanna make a lot of these foods available to folks that don't normally have access.
Mm-hmm.
So
and let's talking a little bit about the price and access of fresh food.
Yeah.
Normally you can in fact find apples and fresh sort of regular European American produce.
Yeah.
in those grocery stores, but it is astronomically
Exactly.
expensive. And
Yeah, some of the, like those apples there, they may not be the best storage apples, but if you have a tree that produces 50 pounds of apples in Metlakatla or Hyder, Alaska, that's not only enough apples for that family to make apple butter and apple products, but that's some to share with their community. Or hey, we're not going to pick all these, have the kids, have your neighbors come pick these apples. It's about sharing the abundance, sharing the surplus. And so the thing is so many people don't even have access to this in the beginning, so let's get them the access so they can start sharing within their communities. Because the communities are already built on sharing and that community, that sense of belonging and taking care of one another. Let's get them the resources so they can help each other more.
how many geese do you have? And
So
males, females?
So the two white ones are males, and we have a female inside the coop sitting on eggs.
Nice.
And so she just
Good.
hisses at us, and then these two just yell at
So
us.
are you going to get goslings soon, or are you going to harvest those eggs?
She's been sitting on them for almost a month, so we're gonna have
So-
goslings. Goose noms! You can see her inside the coop. We dredged this out because we have the little spring that comes down right here.
Oh my God.
So,
Oh,
so,
wow.
so we
Look
actually,
at that.
yeah. So this is the spring, and it'll slow down in the summer, but in the spring, especially during breakup, it's a gushing. So what we did is we dug out a few hollows and lined them with bentonite clay to just because our goal is we really want to. I don't want to have to irrigate all this. I really, with the food forest system, I want to be fairly self-sufficient. So I try to slow the water across the property so it soaks into the soil. And because of that, 2/3 of the property we never irrigate.
Wow, that's
So
great.
most of our fruit, we focus on regenerative practices, sequestering atmospheric carbon and building the soil in place. Because realistically, yeah, cow parsnips, nettles, people think of these as a nuisance, but when you grow these on a property or within a space for hundreds of years, this organic material falls down, it breaks down, and then it regrows and breaks down. The thing is, we have 2.5, 3 feet of black dirt because of that. So it's like the system is already here. Nature's already doing the work for me, so I'm just working with that. And if I can slow the water across the property just a little bit more, it means that it just creates a more sustainable system where I don't have to go out and water it every day. And when we go out there, I'll show you some of the plums and apples and things like that. It kind of speaks for itself. I'll show you the Devil's Club
There's
too.
no irrigation.
Nope.
Like you have one hose going to the baby plants,
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
to keep them damp.
Yep, because unfortunately their roots can't really tap into that soil moisture yet, and they're a little more susceptible. But if I give these a year of watering, next year I wouldn't have to water them.
Awesome.
Is that so?
Yeah, she agrees.
Are you guys familiar with huckleberries at all? One of the tastiest blueberry species on the planet, down in Montana, Washington, Idaho. These are Cascade blue huckleberries from high up in the Cascades. These are the black huckleberries. These are European bilberries. So I want to make some crosses with our native blueberry species to create those with better fruit quality, maybe more precocious, so people can, because domestic variety blueberries just don't do very well here. So I'm trying to make some crosses with our native species, and maybe we'll be able to release some varieties for Alaska's conditions. I'm trying to find things that will do well with minimal input from myself. So it's more of finding their niche where they're happy. So those blueberries, that's one area where I can kind of keep the nettles down, the cow parsnips until they get established, so that's a spot. But out in the food forest, hey, if I find something that is more adapted to rich soil or something that's more adapted to dry sites, it's more of that's where I'm going to be plugging that stuff in. It's the stuff where I'm going to try to find where it's the happiest and where it can take care of itself with minimal input from myself. People think of food as being, okay, we just grow a field of potatoes, we grow a field of corn. This draws inspiration from indigenous cultures where they would grow food. Like their idea of gardens, actually gardens for most folks around the world didn't consist of manicured rows of one species. It was polycultures, it was species growing and complementing one another. So most of what we have here is using the local ecology, the soil building that already exists, and just trying to complement it, finding holes. And like the cow parsnips, yeah, they're rowdy, they get really tall, they'll shade things out. So I don't come in, I'm not gonna spray herbicide, I'm not gonna come kill them. All I'll do is like, hey, you're getting a little rowdy, I'm gonna knock you over. I do that, it becomes like a living mulch right here. Some of it will break down, some of it will continue on. But in doing so, it basically just knocks it back enough so my plant that I want to have it have the sun will now have access to, but it doesn't kill the cow parsnip. It's just cycling the nutrients back to the soil. I'm not gonna remove the organic material, I'm not gonna kill it. It's just, hey, it's already here, I'm gonna work with it. I'm more of a steward of the landscape versus an owner, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I've drawn a lot of my inspiration from indigenous cultures, and that's what I'm trying to use. I want this space to just become something that is abundant for myself and the local ecology. At this point, I'm not here to basically tame this land. I'm not here to make this land into my own idealistic worldview. The thing is this land is already, it's a beautiful entity as itself. Maybe I can just add a couple minor adjustments, plant a couple food crops, and I can work with the land versus against it. Because when you work with the ecology, it's amazing how it all works together at that point. So, hey, I have a shed right here that creates a nice southern microclimate. Let's plant kiwis growing up the side of it because there's nothing growing there. So these are male and female kiwis right here. They produce kiwi berries every year. Hey, over here, I have my giant plum tree and I have an aching cherry underneath. Those are just gonna grow together. And then we have the nettles and the cow parsnips and the bluebells, everything being edible, growing as an understory because, hey, they tolerate shade as is. They'll die back, they become organic material, which will just feed the plum and the aching cherry. And rhubarb is a great species because people, okay, it's a garden vegetable, that's awesome, but it also has deep tap roots that go deep into the soil profile, will mine nutrients, bring them up in their leaves, so it almost becomes like a compost in place sort of plant and becomes a living mulch. So I plant it underneath some of my apple trees and fruit trees. If the grass is starting to get a little rowdy, I'll plant rhubarb there. The big leaves shade out the grass and then the organic material dies back and it becomes a mulch for my apple trees. So instead of having to fight the grass, the rhubarb does the work for me. And plus then I get edibility near the ground layer and I get edibility as an apple tree. And so coming out here, it's almost like foraging because almost everything you see here is edible. Whether it's the fireweed, raspberry shoots, the cow parsnips are edible, the bluebells, the wild geraniums, the nettles, almost everything you see here is edible and also provides for the local ecology. So I can come out at different times of the year and forage for different things. Hey, cow parsnips are delicious when they're under 10 inches tall. It's like a herb vegetable mixture, like flavor wise. It's in the carrot family, so I can harvest some of that. Nettles are delicious. Then later in the season, people make tea out of them, or I can make fiber out of them. So it's just one of those things where instead of looking at this as a weedy patch, I look at this as just pure abundance. Up there, that tall plant, that's Amelanchier alanifolia. It's our native Saskatoon or serviceberry. This is Cradioagus douglasii, also known as your black hawthorn. So it's a species that's native to the Pacific Northwest with a couple populations as far north as southeast Alaska. But it's neat because it produces these big clusters of blackberries that aren't the most tasty, kind of mealy, kind of bland, but they're super rich in pectin. So it's one of those where, hey, you want to make a jam, but you don't want to have to buy pectin in the stores. You mix a couple hawthorn berries in there, you have your pectin, and it will literally gel up overnight. And I can also graft pears onto it, I could graft apples onto it, and then the fruit can be eaten by birds. So it's just a beautiful species. And plus, we're looking for species to replace maydays and the Canada red chokecherries because they're super invasive down here in South Central. So finding species that aren't invasive but can fill a similar niche, that's kind of the goal. So, and plus this has the utility of being edible and actually not bad. Like this is one of the, I mean, everybody here in Anchorage has a mountain ash growing in their yard, but this is one from Russia that actually produces sweet fruits. Something that's already an ornamental tree in people's yards. We're just planting ones that are sweeter and then make them available. Because this is another one, hey, if you have mountain ash in your yard, you could at least graft a sweeter one on it, then you can make jams and jellies and things like that out of it. This is a wild form of brassica. It's actually known as Turkish rock. It's a perennial vegetable. But it's one of those where I try to add this because, yeah, you could plant a field of broccoli every year, but this will come back every year and then I get little broccolinis. I could eat the leaves if I want to. It's a beautiful perennial vegetable that I think is underutilized.
It is almost spicy.
It is.
It has a spice to it.
It is. It has a peppery afterbite. So I always call it peppery broccoli. I have comfrey right here. And so this basically is considered a dynamic accumulator, so deep tap roots that mine nutrients, bring it up. So it's great for compost. So there's tons of nitrogen here. So what I can do is cut this off, use it as mulch around a tree, or I can put it in my compost heap, and it's a huge amount of nitrogen that helps feed into the composting process. I did my first sale a week and a half ago, and so that was my launch of the nursery. So we're starting off with like a soft opening, so kind of a couple plant sales. We're figuring out where I don't even know what the market is. I don't know what the interest is. Like my biggest seller this last sales, it was all salmonberries. It's incredible what the demand was for salmonberries, native berries. You wouldn't believe what the demand was, but nobody's growing them. So it's like, but there's also a ton of demand for like when it came to plums and hazelnuts and things like that. So I'm just trying to kind of figure out what that is, and then I can up like production of different species. But unfortunately, growing perennials, it takes time. So I do a lot of my propagation during the winter under grow lights, then I grow them outside. I can buy myself some time in that process, but it's slow. If I grow 150 blueberries and I sell out, it's going to be probably another year and a half before I can grow enough to that, and they're that size where I can sell them again.
Such is the nature of working with nature, is you
Exactly.
have to wait for nature to be done.
Most nurseries ship in from the lower 48. Oh, I ran out of blueberries, order more. But that doesn't work for native blueberries here. That doesn't work for a lot of the stuff we're trialing here. It's one of those where we have to do it ourselves, and it takes time to do that, especially in Alaska's climate. All of our hazelnuts and blueberries have been overwintered here in Alaska, but that takes time. And unfortunately, Alaska will kill some of those, so there is some culling in that process. But you know, when you get something from that has been overwintered in Alaska's conditions, you know that you're getting something that is ready for Alaska's winter. I think the best piece of advice I got from a plant friend was people like, oh, this doesn't work or does work here in Alaska. if you're not afraid to kill a couple plants, try it yourself, because there are no given rules that apply to everyone in Alaska. There's so many microclimates, there's so many variables and nuances and isms that can be applied that can change the outcome. If I plant if I take 2 sweet cherries that are identical, I plant one up here on the hillside, I plant one down by the creek, the one by the creek will be dead, the one up on the hillside will be fully hardy. And there's that disparity just across my property. Now you do neighborhoods and towns and like miles across Alaska, there are no given rules. So if you're willing to try some things and not afraid of failure, give it a go. Never accept no, whether it's gonna grow or not. Let Alaska decide that for you.
There are paths here,
There are.
but only minimal paths, because is that on purpose?
Yes. The paths are by design because, again, while I do push down cow parsnips and things of that nature, I don't want to be compacting the soil. I don't want to be damaging the soil any more than necessary. So I create narrow little trails that promote the foot traffic in those spots. And then I don't have a problem stepping off the trail, but it promotes people walking, like when I give tours or when I'm walking, I have designated through paths that I will walk on. And then that way I'm not damaging anything. I'm not stepping on anything. I'm not compacting the soil. I have my designated spots that I can go through and then check on my plants. And then, yeah, okay, hey, cow parsnip, you're getting rowdy. I'm gonna knock you back a little bit. But beyond that, it just kind of gives me my thoroughfares.
How do the animals factor into this whole area? Do you bring in their manure, take it away from them and put it in here?
Yep, I do that. And then sometimes my goats are my garden buddies. So I'll bring little Baxter, I'll bring Lily in here, and they will eat the fireweed. So they come in and they follow me around and eat fireweed, and they're just kind of good company. Yeah. But beyond that, it's like they're not, yes, I wouldn't just leave them out here because they would start chewing on things they shouldn't be chewing on, but selectively bring them in to graze. Chickens, I'll bring them in periodically to scratch things up. Ducks are great because we'll get, especially in August, we'll get a lot of slugs down by the creek. Bring the ducks in. The ducks will be they're the best slug hunters on the planet. People think of the grazing of animals as destructive. No, there are ways, especially rotational grazing, where you can move animals through a space that add to the landscape. They add manure, they add biomass, they add slight disturbance, but then they move on. Kind of like those migrating species or wild animals moving through a space. Grazers aren't a bad thing, but when grazers are stuck on a certain paddock or a certain space for too long, that's when they start degrading the space. But if you can carefully introduce them in a controlled fashion and move them across, they add value to the space.
The massive permaculture food forest is only one part of Josh's operation. He is actively propagating and sprouting new plants to integrate into his forest, as well to sell to others. Up on his porch, he keeps a huge collection of baby sprouts and seedlings waiting to grow strong enough to find their forever homes.
So most of these are going to be for plant sales. So like in theory, like these guys, if I were to have a plant sale tomorrow, these salmon berries are ready. So I would sell a salmon berry like this.
Where does the soil come from
So
in these pots?
The goal is eventually I want to be peat free, because we know the ramifications when it comes to peat and harvesting peat and the carbon sequestration and then possibly releasing that carbon. I'm not there yet. So I've realized that was a hard part for me opening a nursery. I wanted to have everything perfect right from the get-go. I wanted to be plastic free, I wanted to be peat free, realizing that I'm never going to open a nursery. I don't have the capital if I completely go off in my idealistic world, and I'll never be selling plants. So in the end, it's detrimental. So I realized it's going to be a work in progress. So all these plastic pots you see are recycled from a former nurseryman. So I'm like, okay, at least we can reuse them, give them more life. And then all of the peat is mixed 50-50 with local peat, leaf mold. So like things like blueberries, they require something acidic like peat, and I haven't figured out a substitute. I couldn't use cocoa coir. I needed something that's acidic because they grow naturally in peat. But I've learned if I mix it 50-50 with leaf mold, it maintains the acidity, but the leaf mold will add more bulk to the soil and they'll grow just as happily. So I'm trying to find those balances where I can reduce my peat use and I can reduce my plastic use. Not many people have prioritized those two, so there isn't a whole lot of like information to go off of. And especially growing perennials, I could use one of like the cow pots, but most of my stuff overwinters a year or two outside. How will that hold up in Alaska's winters and springs and breakups, which are kind of mucky? So there's going to be a lot of experimentation. So in the meantime, using a lot of recycled pots and giving them a new life and just kind of working towards the ultimate goal.
It has been an amazing journey through Bear Mountain Forest Nursery. From the nursery beds to the goose pond, all the way through the beautiful permaculture food forest, there seems to be something to learn around every corner. There was one more thing I wanted to see before we left, however.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
I can go
so
let the baby
let's-
goats out if you want.
Of course. That's
Oh,
what I was really
Otis and
looking for.
Samson are adorable. I will be out in just a moment.
Yeah.
If you liked this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss our next episodes. We pay for everything you see out of pocket just because we believe so much that community gardens deserve a platform. If you believe that too, consider donating to our next project at www.trailheadgarden.com/donate. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the garden path.